Huh, I missed that setup. Yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like out there.
So, yeah, so this is an interesting backstory of this image. I created this with an AI.
You had a look at that.
Yeah, it does. You can tell because there's like garbage on the display, but yeah, I just basically said this was Microsoft's AI, and I said, create a scene in a desolate location. You're in a Quonset hut. There's a desk with a ham radio on it and a computer, and you can see a tower in the distance, and that's what it did. So it was like 2 minutes between start to finish. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like Copilot?
Kind of Copilot. It's built into the Azure somewhere, but yeah, it's associated with Copilot. Okay, I did not create this one with an A. Yeah, it's great how many Homer Simpson cartoons there are out there for around ham radio. Anyway, so why would you want to operate remotely? The obvious thing is you've got land someplace, like Mr. Stevens here and these guys, where you've got land somewhere in a very low noise area and where you live in a place where it's a little bit harder to operate because of an HOA or like, Mike, Mike, what do you call it? He goes by Mike or John, but anyway, yeah, you're like a mile from a bunch of AM transmitters. Yeah. So he's got huge, noise at this location.
Is that the transmitter down here by Kennedy?
No, one right off of like 285
Yeah.
The AM station there.
Yeah, they're putting out what, is it 50,000 during the day?
No, it's 10,000 a day, 5,000 a night.
10,000 during the day, 5,000 a night.
One's 1,000 the entire time directional right toward me. So I've got a bunch of.
So that's why John's always got this healthy tan. He's got that radiation going all the time. Yeah, I remember back in the day, I don't know if they still do it, but KLZ, I think at one point it was 50,000. That's crazy.
And the worst part about these two stations, they're co-located at the same place. They're using the same antenna. One's at 1690, the other's at 1590.
Yeah.
So there's ESPN and which is a sports station, and then Catholic Radio has bought the other one. And so sometimes you'll hear the intermod and it sounds like they're saying, "Touchdown, Jesus." Serious, I heard that.
So you probably hear it in your phone too. Like I remember I grew up right over here and we had the transmitter top of Green Mountain. And I remember you could pick up the phone and you could hear the radio station in the background. Yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, so that's a big reason. HOAs, of course, some people you just can't put up an antenna, or if you do, it's a seriously compromised antenna. High Cure, and we already talked about that. This is what I do, is you're lazy and you don't want to have to go downstairs, like my ham shack's down in my basement with all the spiders and everything. And it's just kind of nice to be sitting upstairs on the couch or, in a more comfortable environment and operate it that way. I also use it when I'm traveling, because I travel a fair amount. So it's nice to be able to, when you're sitting in a hotel room somewhere and you don't have anything better to do other than go out for an expensive meal, is be able to log in and, play around with your radio. And this is another use case that just kind of occurred to me, which is, if you've got one of these expensive setups, you could actually rent it out. There's lots of places like remotehamradio.com where you can, just choose time slots and rent it out to folks, help defray your costs. There's also one I just discovered called remotehams.com, which is free software mainly designed for helping you share your station with others. So, cool stuff. Remote operating considerations. So here's an example screenshot from one of those. I'll talk more about this one in a little bit here. So of course, all this stuff's based on the internet. And so you got to think about your internet connection. I've got slides coming up that kind of dive into these, so I'll get into these in more detail in a minute. Your location and environmental concerns, what radios you have or can get or afford, and their capabilities, what operating systems and hardware you have for your computer, because most machines nowadays need some kind of computer, what mode you want to run, and how are you going to gather telemetry. So if you do have a remote location that's not your basement, you're going to want to do things like look at, the site, what temperature is it, what the power is doing, all that kind of stuff, and also budget. And I know Mark will probably talk a lot more about that too, since both Marks, actually, you guys have remote stations that you do that kind of stuff with. So as far as connectivity, so of course, there's lots of different ways to get internet nowadays. Cable, DSL, mesh / Wi-Fi, fiber satellite, LTE, 5G. The only thing you really need to think about, the nice thing about operating remotely, doesn't use a lot of bandwidth. Especially even if you're running digital modes. So it's not so much the speed itself. As long as you have a good stable connection, 10 megabits is plenty. But it better be 10 up and down. And the problem with some of your internet connections nowadays is that they're different going up and down. So there's a lot of those things, like, for example, cable is designed for home users primarily. And so you have much greater download speeds because that's what most people are doing. They're streaming video or whatever it is they're doing, right? And the upload speeds are not great. And so, like, I had Comcast for 10 years and I think it was 300 megabits down, but I only had 10 going up on a good day, right? And which is still enough, but it's not great. And so now I'm on fiber and I have 500, and that's incredible. And it's so stable. Another consideration, though, is jitter and latency. If you don't know what those are, jitter is basically speed kind of jittering all over the place, and the what do you call it? The delay of the package coming in and out. And latency is another kind of form of that. So basically, if you're sending a packet out and you're expecting one back, if it doesn't come back, or if they come back in different orders, which sometimes happens, it causes all kinds of trouble. Right, so getting a stable connection is probably more important than the speed. Okay, and so that's where things like satellite is, especially some of the newer satellites that use low Earth orbit and whatnot, have pretty good speeds. The latency is still an issue because they're still however many miles up there. So you got time for the signal to go up and back. One of my friends has Starlink and he lives out in North Carolina somewhere. And he's got their $500 a month plan. So it's like their business plan. And I'll be on Zoom with him and his video will just freeze, or his audio. It's kind of like max headroom sometimes. And so we would expect for $500 a month, it would be a little more stable than that. And if you're just doing Zoom, you can always kind of make up what he's saying. But if you're on the radio, that can cause all kinds of weird problems.
It's just some space weather hitting the satellite.
Yeah, right. Space weather. Those satellites are not geostationary. They're all moving, right? So, it's kind of like a cellular network where it's always handing off from one constellation to another. So it's pretty amazing. All kinds of weird stuff going on. Anyway, and then the other thing is, there's T-Mobile, AT&T, all these guys are selling home internet, which actually goes over the LTE network, 5G network. And those are okay, but again, depending on your distance from the cell site and all that kind of stuff, your mileage may vary. One of my coworkers has T-Mobile's LTE. He's about ready to throw it out the window because he's just not getting reliable connection.
So I've had the T-Mobile 5G now for like 3 years, and I never dreamed of having 300 or 400 megabits per second up in conifers in the mountains, and it's worked great.
That's good. Yeah. So Mark Kessman has had it, T-Mobile, for 3 years, and so you get 300 or so.
Yeah, I mean it's the speed, it's pretty amazing. So
so it's like that's one of those things where your mileage may vary. It really just depends on your location and distance from, and the topology between you and the cell site.
I think T-Mobile has low band spectrum that works really well for greater distances, like 600 megahertz or something like that, that I don't think Verizon or AT&T actually have. So
interesting. Yeah. So T-Mobile may have, or it does. I think it might be in the 700 megahertz range, but
somewhere in there.
They've got lower frequencies which work better at distance. So it's a consideration, but like I'm under a mile. I'm probably a tenth of a mile from a cell site, but I sit down in a valley, and so the signals go right over. So on the second floor of my house, I get pretty good signal, but on the first floor, forget it. I can't get anything. So it's all up to where you are. And the last thing, being a security guy, I always think about that, especially if you have a true remote site or you're remotely accessing your home site. You got to think about security. You want the connection to be secured, be encrypted. So a VPN. I'm going to get a little bit more into that in a little bit here, and there's some options there that I'll talk about. Okay, another AI generated image, in case you couldn't tell. That is one big tornado. And I think that tower's toast. Pretty good. Towers. Yeah. So, yeah, things to think about, power availability, reliability, especially if you're out in, Strasbourg or whatever, do you have backup power? Do you care? If the power goes out for a while, maybe you don't. Like in the Jim Warwick's situation, he's got, a public internet, provider on site there, so I think he's got a pretty solid, Wi-Fi connection there. About his power situation. So, but think about that. The other big thing around power related to is lighting, of course. And I know, John, you and I have had discussions around doing a remote site at his place, but you want to be able to take your antenna offline when you're not using it, in case lucky enough to get something. Heavy rain and microburst too. Like happened to Jim Orbeck, where a microburst came through and it basically destroyed one of his towers. Internet availability, get some water. I'll already talked about that a little bit, but obviously nowadays you really need that. Physical security. So, think about the location where you're going to be placing this, and how secure it is, how visible it is from the road. Like if you're out in the middle of nowhere, well, you're probably okay. But if you're close to the interstate or something, maybe not as much. Access to the site and the topology. Obviously, if you're going to put up antennas and stuff, you need to think about, things like, what antennas you're going to put up, and how they're going to work based on where it's located. Like in John's case, his place is up on the side of a mountain, near Fair Play. And so, you've got great visibility one direction and zero visibility the other direction. You've got a big mountain behind you. Right? And then noise levels and nearby transmitters. What to think about. Okay, let's talk about equipment a little bit. So obviously, some radios are a lot easier to run and remotely than others. Typically, the older transmitters and transceivers don't have USB audio built into them. So you've got a lot of radios that have a USB connection, but it's just for CAT or for radio control. And the audio only goes out analog through the jacks. Newer radios, so for example, the Yaesu FT891 is one of those that just has CAT via USB with no sound in or out digitally. The Xiegu G90, Kenwood TS480, and so on. And so you can still do that with those. Like I did FT8 with a Kenwood TS4, what was my first one? TS430S, which was a 1988 radio. And it had CAT control, but it did not have audio. So signaling solved that problem. So it's able to, but no, I take it back, didn't have CAT control, because I still had to adjust the frequency because it was so old. But I was still able to do FT8 with a signal link. If you don't know what a signal link is, it's a little USB box, plug into your computer, and it's like a virtual sound device that you can then plug the input and output into any other, like a radio or network. So they're great little devices. I've got more on that a little bit later. New radios have USB control and a sound card built into them. For example, the ICOMs, starting with the 7100. Yaesu, as far as I know, only has one radio that really does that. That's the FT991A. And then the other newer ones go one step further. So the problem with remote access on this kind of middle class here is they have USB, but they don't have a network built into them. And so to control those, you're going to have a computer of some sort sitting in between to provide that. And the very newest ones, like all the flexes, for example, flex radios, the ICOM IC705, which has Wi-Fi built into it, the 7610 has Ethernet built into it, and so does the Kenwood TS990S. And so those, you literally just plug it into a jack in your internet, and then you can access it remote because it's just a node on your network. And then, of course, the flexes were exclusively designed for remote access. In fact, many of those flexes don't even have a display because they were obviously designed for complete remote connectivity. Okay, as far as modes, so, obviously the big ones are phone, CW, the digital modes like FT8, FT4, and then the older digital modes like RIDI and PSK31, so on. If you look at digital, these older modes really just kind of go out as voice, right? So they're kind of the same requirements as phone. FT8, FT4, they are similar to that, except it requires a little bit more control as far as being able to communicate with the rig. And those typically also incorporate cat control, video control. CW is really interesting because there's many, many different ways of doing that. So for example, some rigs will, obviously you can hear it, but sending it, the only way to do it is through the keyboard. So it's actually generating the code for you. Others, like for example, the Flex with a Win keyer plugged into it, you can use a paddle, whatnot. So there's all kinds of different ways of doing that. As far as the environment, it's nice to be able to gather telemetry from the remote location. So again, what's the temperature in there in the shack? What's the temperature of your radio? What's the electricity doing? Are you getting spikes or sags, that kind of stuff? Maybe even be able to get remote video and sound to be able to see what's happening out there is a good thing. And then physical controls, being actually able to control what's happening. Right, so be able to control the temperature, be able to reboot things not only through the radio, but through like the old-fashioned turn the power off and back on kind of thing. Right? As far as like doing things like grounding your antenna out when you're not using it, so to help with lightning prevention. And then locks, rig power, all that kind of stuff, and things that you want to think about controlling remotely. And Mark, you were doing some APRS. Somebody was doing some APRS. Yeah. Mark Edwards, you're doing that now?
No, about a year ago, I moved to a whole new generation of power control, and I don't need it.
Oh, okay.
Anymore. But it worked great.
Yeah, so Mark was using APRS, but that's a really inexpensive way to get telemetry out. So providing you have something that can receive it within range of your location. And that's cheap too, right? It's basically free other than the hardware. Okay, moving right along. So now I'll finish up with a few examples. The ICAM 7300 is probably one of the easier ones just because there's so many of them. So there's so many utilities and things available for it. It's the most popular HF radio. Sold over 100,000 of those now. Incredible. Rob, I think you probably sold at least 90,000 of those.
We sold 3.
Only 3? Huh? Okay. You're busy then. Oh my. So nice thing is, as I mentioned earlier, it's got a USB port for cat control, as well as it creates a virtual sound device. So when you plug it in your computer, it shows up as COM port and also as an audio in and audio out device just within your control panel.
Keep waiting for an updated 7300. It seems like it's been what, 5 years?
Yeah.
It doesn't have Ethernet on it and all that, the 70s.
Mark's watch being a little too helpful to me.
Yeah, Doofus woke up.
Yeah, their comment was, yeah, we're waiting for an updated IC 7300. Yeah, it's at least 5 years old now. Right. I guess they're still selling a lot of them. So. Yeah, I think that what they're doing is they're taking upside to the 7610, it's got Ethernet in it, but it's a lot more money too. The downside of the 7300 is to remotely control it from a computer. You need to buy their software, which retails for $140. You can get it cheaper online, although that's kind of, are you getting it used on somebody? Does the serial number work and all that stuff? And it only runs on Windows. And so that means that you're going to have a Windows PC sitting next to the computer to do that. The other thing that's a downside of it is that it doesn't have any sort of remote access capabilities. So in other words, if you want to get to it remotely, you need to be able to get through your firewall from another computer. So that's a whole nother nightmare as far as opening ports and all kinds of stuff. What I have found, and this is what I do, I mean, when I first put it up, I did go that route. I opened up ports in my firewall and all that stuff. And then it dawned on me, I could just have a PC sitting next to it and just remote into it using Splashtop, which is secure, doesn't require firewall forwarding and all that stuff.
What did you call that?
Splashtop.
Like,
Splashtop, yeah. It's also about the cheapest one, commercial one that's out there. So, yeah, there's a bunch of different ones, and we've got Go to My PC, Splashtop, can't think of the others, but
Any desk?
you know, any desk, yeah, there's probably a dozen different ones out there. But they've gotten very expensive. Like Go to My PC at one point was like $10 a month or something, and it's like 5 times that. It's crazy. So they've kind of priced themselves out of the, deliberately priced themselves out of the, you know, the home market. They just want to build a solution. So like, as I said, it's software is not trivial to set up, might require VPN or port forwarding to get through to it.
How laggy is it?
It's not bad.
Interesting.
Yeah, not bad at all. It's built using kind of classic client server protocols.
Yeah.
And because it's directly connected to a PC, you know, it's very fast that way. And so if it's laggy at all, it's because your connection into your remote site is performing the internet.
Can I ask
You
a question?
can,
Sorry.
another question.
So if you're using Splashtop, are you then just using the computer next to the IC 7300?
Yes.
So you're not using the computer on your desk remotely?
Yeah, so the question was, if you're using Splashtop, are you using a computer? Yeah, so what you're doing is you're remoting into the computer that's directly connected to the radio from another computer.
Right.
Right, yeah. And the nice thing about Splashtop is it works on Mac and Windows. I even have it on my iPad. Right, so it doesn't have to match the operating system that's connected to the radio, because you're just remotely controlling it.
So are you using RSPA one?
The question was, are you using the RSP one? No, I'm not for that. Because it's directly connected to the radio, it's literally like as if you're sitting in front of it. The only time you need the software is because what it is the client server software. So you have a PC sitting there running the server side of RSPA one. And then you have the client piece of it installed on the other computer controlling it from. And it has to have some kind of connectivity with that computer over the network. Whereas if you go the Splashtop route, you're just remoting into that device as if you're sitting. So much.
Does that, it doesn't allow you to do CW then?
Let me think. So the question was, does it allow you to do CW? I think you can do it through the keyboard, but you can't use a pad. Yeah. But if you do have the remote version of it, with a wing key or whatever, you can do it that way. Yeah, good point. So that's one advantage. Okay. Oh yeah, and then if you really want to get fancy, they sell a little USB remote encoder wheel, which is literally just a dial with a couple of buttons on it. $300 for that thing. It doesn't even have a display. Yeah, expensive. Okay. Another way to do it is with the ICOM 705 or 7610. And as I mentioned, the 705 has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in it. The 7610 has an Ethernet port. And you still need that software, the RSBA1 V2, to do it. But the thing that's nice about it is that, like with my IO705 as well, and you can connect directly to it via Wi-Fi. You don't even have to be connected to an access point. You can just do a point-to-point connection.
So 705 has Wi-Fi, but no Ethernet.
Right, 705 has
That's
Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but no Ethernet. And what's cool about the Bluetooth is you can use a Bluetooth headset with it too, which is good. So like when I do power soda, oftentimes I'll use a Bluetooth headset with 705. So I can be wandering around, I don't even have to be in front of the radio, and it's got a push to talk button and everything, which is cool. You can also do remote FT8 with it over Wi-Fi, just from the tablet. And then the 7610 is basically the same situation, except for it's got to be connected into an Ethernet. And of course, you're not going to stick that in your backpack. That's your crazy. But again, those both require that software. Yeah, 6400. I won't get into this a whole lot because Mark's going to touch on it, but all those flexes were designed for remote access from the start. Our club remote stations is 6400. There's an image of it, so you can see it has a power button. And that's pretty much it. The rest of it's all done through their software. Mark's going to show you more about that. You can also buy the Maestro console, which as you saw, we have one running over there, which costs as much as another radio or more. But it basically replicates a traditional radio controls. So Flex has basically built their business around SDRs that are remotely controlled. And yeah, so yeah, there it is, $1,600 for the Maestro. Now, if you have Yaesu, there's a similar situation there. So most of the Yaesu radios, the more common and recent ones, like the FTDX 1200, 3000, 5000, 9000, and 991A, have Cat and sound cards through the built-in USB. And then if you have the older Yaesus, you can also do the other route with a what you call it, signaling to do sound. There is remote software available for only $60. It's a third party that makes it that will allow you to do remote control. And of course, it's okay. Like most. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Here's my remote. This is kind of a little bit of a older picture. I have my loaner amp that John had lent me for a while. I now have my own amp, but basically you can see my 7300 here tuner. I have a little Windows PC that I bought off of Amazon for about $80. It's a Lenovo mini PC that works great. And then just a monitor. And then basically I can remote into that PC, and then the PC is USB connected to my radio. As far as power, I just have a smart power strip that's got Wi-Fi in it. That's controllable from Alexa. And so that's cool. So I have a few Alexa devices throughout my house. So I can just say, Alexa, ham check on, and it just powers everything up. Turns on the power of the rig, turns on the monitors and all that stuff. And then I also have it set to automatically turn the station off at 2 a.m. in case I forget. So the only thing I don't have that I should add is remote control of the antenna. So I have to remember to go down there and ground it out. I'll have my wife do it if I'm not home. As far as the network, I've got an Eero Pro 6 Wi-Fi network connected to my fiber. That gives me 300 megabits up and down anywhere in the house. That's pretty awesome. And everything is just connected via Wi-Fi. I also sometimes have my 705 down there if I want to run QRP, and I can just connect to that over Wi-Fi. And other than that, yeah, so like I said, I've got this Lenovo is my Shack PC, and then I've got a variety. You can see them on the table there. So I've got a couple of Dell Latitude laptops running Windows. One's an ultralight that I use for field work, and I have my main machine, which is a MacBook. And the nice thing about that is I can use Splashtop with the MacBook, connect to the Windows box from anywhere. Use it. Okay. Oh yeah, I also have an Android burner phone. So I go to these hacker conferences. So I use a burner phone when I go to those things. So I don't want anybody to be able to get to my actual phone. So I just leave it in the hotel room. But the nice thing about Android, and that my main phone's an iPhone. Nice thing about Android is all this cool ham radio stuff for it. So, for example, you can get the software called DroidStar, which works over Wi-Fi through the internet, and basically lets you get to all the DMR and Yaesu and other digital networks just for the little app. So you just have a little phone in the app, and you can talk all over the world. Now, some people may say that's not really ham radio. We won't debate that today, but anyway, it is pretty cool, especially when you're sitting in a hotel room somewhere. I also have figured out with my iPhone, I found a little app called iFTX. And what that does is it allows you to do FT8 from your iPhone. You literally just plug a little dongle into the back of the iPhone, and then you can connect USB to a radio. And you have to turn on what they call that Vox, VOX, so that when it sees sound coming, that it keys. But yeah, I've been able to run FT8 from my iPhone over my little QRP Labs QMX QRP device, and that's all you need. It's a phone, this little 4-ounce device, and an antenna and battery. Okay, this is something really cool and very new. if you listen to the Ham Radio Workbench podcast, they just did a whole session on this. But George J6VU, one of the primary guys, who's also involved with Flex, is building this dedicated station controller. It's modular and it's very cool. So it starts out, as you can see, there's different boards for different things. So like you start down here in the corner, it's got a Raspberry Pi, which is the brain of the whole thing. It's also got, it provides good connectivity to Wi-Fi. And he's got some kind of other wireless control capability there. And then it just connects over Ethernet to all these other boards. So he's got an input-output module. So that would be for monitoring and controlling things. He's got a coax switch built in, which is, as you can see, uses relays to do that. He's got a data and power hub. That's pretty obvious. And he's also got a built-in SWR and wattmeter module. And this connects to external digital watt meters and SWR meters. So this is in beta right now. He hasn't announced pricing yet. I know it's not going to be cheap because this is after all, one of the guys that's involved with Flex, but but it's going to be pretty cool. So if you're interested, there's all the links to check it out. Oh, and that brings up Node-RED. I think I might have a slide on this, but Node-RED is a really cool. If you're not a programmer, but you want to be able to control devices and do like websites and stuff to control the devices, Node-RED is something worth checking into. It's what they call a low-code, no-code platform for controlling things. And so that's what he uses for the user interface. I thought I had a screenshot though. Anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. I think you're using Node-RED, aren't you? Yeah. Mark Edwards is using Node-RED. Anybody else here using it? Yeah. Might be a good topic for another meeting. Okay, other remote operating options. As I mentioned, there's this remote TX, not trivial. It uses a Raspberry Pi, so you have to be fluent in Raspberry Pi to start with. But basically, you connect that to your supported rig. It's a subscription model, $40 for 6 months, $70 a year. You can do a trial if you want. Supports most of your modern rigs. It does have a text keyer, so you can type in and it'll generate the code for you. We'll also support FT, but only on the 7300. And then you also have to do virtual audio cables, which is like a software patch, which is not easy to do either, but it does work. And it does have a web-based remote user interface. And yeah, you can kind of see it in the background. That was that first screenshot that I showed you. That's the web interface for the remote TX.
When we turn the lights off.
That's what I'm gonna do right now.
Okay. We're turning the lights off. So bear with us for a second here. No naps are not, no napping is allowed. Just saying. Okay. Yeah, and I mentioned these other two options before. So there's remote hams, which is for sharing software. I've not tried these. There's also, I use these a lot, the remote receive only SDRs, which is completely free. So websdr.org is the one I typically use. And they have receivers all over the world. And so what's cool about those is if you want to just test your rig and see if you're getting out, you can go, like you can connect to one in Utah and listen to yourself and see, you know, how far you're getting. It's kind of like a reverse beacon network, except for you can hear yourself instead of relying on this. Digital mode interfaces. So again, these are things that create a virtual sound card that you can plug into your computer, and then it gives you an analog in and out to plug into the radio. So that's what you would use for some of the older radios. The Tigertronic signaling QSB is the one I have the most experience with. They're great. They're easy to use. About $150 new, but you can pick them up used for 100 or so. And then West Mountain, which also of course sells a whole bunch of the Anderson Powerball stuff. They have a thing called the Rig Blaster, which I've not played with. And then if you want the Cadillac, there's the Microham Micro Keyer 3, which has a radio control interface and a sound card and a CW interface and all kinds of stuff. They also control rotators. So I mean, if you want the Cadillac remote control device, that's the one there. They start at $500 and go up. Okay. So let's move on. This is a shot of the club.
So this
Club
was
room.
AI generated here?
Yeah. This is not AI generated, as far as you know.
I don't know, the blue on the radio looks a little suspicious.
Yeah, it is a little weird, but, yeah, so that's the flex there, power supply and so on. Is that our Dell? Yeah, so we have Dell out there for so Mark, I'll let you take it. You have, you want me to share your screen?
Oh, welcome, everybody. Just a show of hands, how many people here have been on our remote sometime? Oh, that's great. Great. And just in general, what are everybody's favorite operating modes? Hands for CW. Hands for
I
sideband.
started doing CW. The CWX is pretty cool, but
And sideband?
I made one sideband contact last night, first time in 50 years.
Okay, very good. And FT8. So, pretty,
FT4.
oh, well, any of.
No, I know, but I mean, FT4 is pretty cool. I'm
Yes,
becoming a
FT4 is great.
advocate.
Well, to introduce the station, we went on the air in July of 2022. And we rolled it out to the public at the IEEE antenna forum downtown at the convention, the IEEE convention. We've been on the air since then and really haven't had any service interruptions except for one last fall when we got a nearby lightning hit and it took out the internet. And I was really worried that it would also take out the radio, but we didn't know because we didn't have the internet. And when the internet came up, the radio was perfect. So all of this grounding that we've done and lightning protection seemed to work in that case. Doesn't mean it's going to work next time. Mark,
So I was just gonna add, so the IEEE had a convention in downtown Denver and they gave booth space to the ARRL. And so the ARRL, I mean, they were looking for people to go down there. So we went down there and Mark brought his Maestro, had it sitting on the counter, and that was quite a conversation piece in this IEEE room in the convention center down there, was him showing off the software-defined radio.
yeah. So the documentation now, we have been living dangerously because if anything had happened to me, all the documentation was right up here. And if you'd walked into that room out there and said, where does this cable go? And where does, where do I start? What lights are normal? And what lights are wrong, are alarms? You wouldn't have had a clue. So this is the URL. The documentation is at this URL. And that's what's up on the screen right now. And this is the password, and I'm not going to say it on this recording because it's open to the public. So we password protected the weeds, where you get into the weeds with how to reset it and how to turn it off and how to do things like that. You don't really want the public to know. Everybody in here is a member and you have the privilege as a member to get in there. So there's the password. And it might look familiar if you've been on the remote. So the first page that when you first log in, this is what you'll see. It's open. This first page is open to the public. It's not password protected. And all this is the setup guide for when you first get on. And a couple of things here to note. There's a good, where's the mouse? There it is. There's a YouTube that explains what all the buttons and knobs are on your screen when you're logged in. And it's 4 years old, and it's still the best one I've seen. The version numbers on the software are kind of old. So you can use the latest software, but the rest of the video is great. Then there's a link there of how to get the latest software. And this is a step-by-step of how to get connected. And the important thing on this page is you can do it all yourself, but please contact me. First time you get on, I want to see the IP that you get in with and the name of your computer, so that I can put that in our records, so that when I'm looking at the log, I know, oh, that's legit. If I see somebody that just got on their own, I might block you. So please let me know. And there's 3 different ways to get a hold of me. And then you scroll down. And we wanted a simplified block diagram. There's you at the client side, and there's the radio at the remote. That's the block diagram. That's about as complicated as it is. Not at all complicated. Now you notice up here is kind of obscure purposely. There are 3 buttons: home, about, and what we want to get to is the service manual. And there's your password. So that's to keep the public out of our detailed information. And the password is what's written over there on the board. We're here. So this is the real block diagram on the latest technology of whiteboarding. But you can, this gets you in the door. You can see the radios there, the power supply. Mark showed you the picture of the radio on the rack, the 2 power supplies, and the PC. So one power supply is dedicated to the radio, and the other power supply is dedicated to all of the accessories, so that we don't have noise on the power power for the radio. A couple of things. This panel is the single point of ground panel, so that all the grounds come to one point. When we have a lightning event, the ground will all go up together instead of having separated ones. You'd have ground going up here, voltage going up on a ground here and here. You have voltage differences, and that'll destroy your equipment. So that's the purpose of a single point ground panel. So we have everything: AC antennas, the Ethernet, and the antenna is grounded when we're not on the air. There's a Dow key relay that just throws the antenna to the ground. That's what we're talking about. And this documentation just gets you through some of the important things, like what if the radio is locked up for who knows what reason? Maybe a reboot will fix it.
So we actually can reboot the radio. I've never tried to do that, but.
Why not?
Okay. I mean, I think I did it when we were standing in the room there, but
Yeah.
I've never done it for long.
So for our power control, we're using a Wise smart plug, WISE. So all we have to do, it's a smart home device that costs $17 at Home Depot, has 2 AC outlets. So we plug that into our power feed, and then those 2 power supplies into the back of that. And one of the outlets says leave on. So that's the power for the radio, because the radio stays on all the time. And the remote on actually turns on and off the remote jack on the back of the radio that actually brings the radio up. So those are both on all the time. 24 hours a day. But if you need to, you can go in and turn either one or both of those off. And it'll turn the radio off, and then you turn it back on. Then we'll reboot the radio.
So the remote on off is just the control jack, and that's it. It's on the back of the radio.
Correct.
Okay, and then the leave on one, does that turn off both power supplies? Or just the,
Correct.
okay,
Can you go back up to the block diagram? Left side, the WYC, line 6400, Armstrong 35 amp, is that a fuse, a breaker, or what is it?
That's a power supply. That's this guy right here.
That's the power, okay. That's good.
yeah, this is good that you show the rack pictures to match up.
Yeah, zoom this in a little bit.
I was just gonna ask you to see that.
Yeah, where's the plus? Just down the screen.
Okay. So we're always on or leave on. I changed the word from leave to always. This is the power supply for the radio. So the radio's on all the time. This is the power for the accessories. And one of the accessories is a relay for the remote jack. So that actually enables the radio to be accessed remotely.
So, wait a minute, so the box, so the second button on the Ys also controls this power strip
Yes,
along with the control.
the
plug on
power
the back
strip
of
has
the
the
radio.
accessories plugged in.
Yeah, okay, I didn't realize, I thought they were all on the other side, that's cool, okay.
So this is kind of split in half. This is the radio, and it's continuously on. And this is also continuously on. But if for some reason you wanted to reboot just this half. Now, this was the first year, the drawing the first year. And we added in the meantime. So with this, it's the first year, when a thunderstorm came up, I had to dial in and turn off the Ys so it would ground this relay.
That's what I remember, yeah.
Yeah. And that was okay if I was home and knew the thunderstorm was around. We wanted to come up with something automatic, so we now have a Raspberry Pi right here that looks for somebody logged into the radio and connects the antenna. As soon as you log out of the radio, it sees nothing but null and it grounds the antenna. So it's totally automatic. And whenever you're not in, the antenna is grounded.
Just to make sure nobody logs in when there's a light.
Well, that's right. You have to, please don't stay on during a
Check the
thunderstorm.
weather forecast out there in
And,
Strasburg.
and you won't know, you know, you can have a thunderstorm in Strasburg.
Right.
You could be on in Florida.
Does it time out, if you log in?
No,
So if you log,
if you're transmitting, there's a 3-minute emergency shutdown as required for.
Couple times I let it run for like 2, 3, 4 hours. I mean, and I'm like, does anybody know how to text me and say, hey, I'm waiting to use the radio, you know?
The radio's running all the time. And the access is running all the time. So the only difference is you've connected to it over the internet. Or not. So the radio doesn't care, but we don't care how long you're on.
except if a thunderstorm comes in, if you never got to log out.
Precisely. Longer.
Yeah, summertime. I've been doing it.
You know, what we could do is,
What, Mark?
getting fancy, what we could do is add a process to the Raspberry Pi that checks the weather forecast.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And if there's a lightning alert, automatically,
course, then we don't want people logging into the radio.
Really, we should have some user management software. And this is one of my frustrations with Flex, is there's other clubs
All right,
using a Flex like
we'll get
this.
there. Hang
Okay,
on.
good, all right,
All right, so-
I'll shut up.
the first thing in the manual tells you how to reboot. Some explanation there. Our internet is supplied complimentary by Jim Morissette. That wonderful Starhaven. It's just hard to be appreciative enough of him providing the location, the quiet,
Yeah, it's,
and he provides the power. We don't have to have solar panels. He provides the internet. We don't have to pay a thing. Part of the internet is that, by the way, in the manual, that's our public IP, the dedicated static IP that we get.
so they give us a static IP.
Yeah, we
Yeah, that's
have
what I remember talking about.
Yeah, because the way we're going, we have to use port forwarding, and we have to have a static IP for port forwarding. We're not connecting to the radio over VPN. We're connecting to the computers, accessories over VPN. And this is a little thing from ChatGPT that tells you what ports we could configure. This whole thing, and then this right here is how we are configured. And it talks about the router at Starhaven, and the login and the password are taped on labels on the bottom of the router. So you can get in if you're there. This is that Dell at the bottom. I rescued this Dell when we had the work party out there and put all
I wondered if that was.
the PCs and everything. I said, that just looks too good. I'm gonna rescue that. So I salvaged it. I put memory in it and a hard drive and a copy of Windows 10 with the,
What did it have on it? 7 or something, or?
yeah,
XP?
7 or 8.
Wow.
And it's about 10 years old. But it hasn't gone down since I put it up about a year ago. And this is how to get into that. There's also a Raspberry Pi I mentioned earlier that has been added. The Raspberry Pi provides many functions for us. One of them is where I mentioned it's looking for activity, somebody being logged in, and it ungrounds the antenna if you're logged in. That's this relay right here that comes off a GPIO pin, and then the output goes over through this gray cable to the single point of ground panel where the Dow key coax relay is. Just to put all that together. Now here's a list of all the things that Raspberry Pi does. One of the things we do, we poll the flex every 15 seconds or 10 seconds and look at the status that poll returns and put that in a log if it's changed from the previous 10 seconds. So we're not just filling the log. No, if it's changed, this is a sample of what we're putting in the log. For instance, here's a guy whose computer is named EHR. So in other words, this is Mark. This is our log of him logging in. This is his IP address, the name of the software he's using, some stuff that doesn't mean too much to us, his internet, his broadband service, and the timestamp. So that's him connecting. And then when he disconnects, he'll be sending nulls. And we'll get, nothing. So we get a null. So we put a timestamp on that, and that goes into the log. So we have a log of everything for the last 2.5 years on this little Raspberry Pi. Just so you know, and this is just a sample. And notes on how the the program on the Pi was written in Node-RED, what it does, how it does it. We added commas so you could download this file to a Excel spreadsheet as a CSV. And there, oh, if you want to get into that Node-RED over 0 tier, there's the IP address and the port. And you notice 192.168 sounds like a local address, but 194 rather, sounds like, hey, I've never heard of one like that before. That's because this is 0 tier. That's the 0 tier network that we're on. Some other things the Raspberry Pi is doing for us. There's a web page that you can log into at any time that shows you what's going on in the radio in real time, not the log. It's the same information, but this is in real time. So this is who's logged in, what their name is, all that stuff. At one time, I was gonna get rid of the Y's and do it out of the Pi. And I came to the conclusion that adding more stuff to the Pi is probably making it less reliable. And the Y's is never gonna get us in trouble. So the software's written, but we never implemented it. So it's just sitting there. This is how we did that Dalkey relay on, and a picture of it up close. Next thing in the manual is an explanation of what we call the MTU problem. That's you can read all about that on your own if you want to.
So comment on that in forum at Flex Radio last week or two. Mike, whatever, said that they think they have resolved the MTU problem. And I was having trouble getting into it, so I lowered my MTU, but that didn't solve the problem. I was gonna go back and change my MTU back to 1500 and see if I still had a problem. So I was just,
Well, they haven't solved the MTU problem. What they've done is they put a setting so that you can manually change the MTU on the Flex.
right,
What they haven't done is turned on ICMP, Internet Control Message Protocol,
yeah,
so that it can get a frag request from the router so that it will fragment packets if they're too big. So they haven't fixed the problem.
okay, well. I should have,
That's a little IT.
yeah, no, that's good information, because I was gonna play around.
So
with
we
it.
still need to pay attention to the MTU.
And
and
what
this
do you
is-
have there for the MTU, is it 1450? 14,
Well, we picked 1438 just because it works well, but anything below about 1470 will work. Just so the pack, what we're talking about is the window size, it's sometimes called,
the Ethernet.
the size of the packet sent on the internet. The standard IETF specification is 1500 bytes. And 40 of those bytes is the header. And then however many bytes you want to send for your payload, as long as you don't exceed total of 1500, that's the window size. And if you want to get deeper, there's a whole paper in here on that. Then how we chose the Flex radio. Well, it was kind of a no-brainer because it was built to be a remote radio. And we used the Rig Pi, we tried to get a Rig Pi working. And this is a little bit of the story. You can read that on your own if you want. This is a picture of our antenna out there. It's a dipole. I cut the building off
It's not the yacht, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is what the wind storm, the microburst damaged it. It damaged, it ruined the tower at the bottom. And it bent some elements up here. So that's Jim's Moravec's. And this is the building we're in. And we, Mark, drilled a hole and a work party.
With permission.
Spent a whole day putting an eye bolt in the corner of the shed of the building so that we could run our dipole out to this piece of irrigation pipe that's 36 feet tall. And this is ladder line coming down. There's a tuner you can't really see.
That junk pile's gone now.
Yeah, the junk pile was also a work party that we cleared out. Yeah, that's more of the single point of
The
ground.
attachment on the left, what material is that?
You're talking about
On the left of your dipole, you've got the.
up on the antenna?
Yeah. On the left there, yeah, right on the edge of the screen,
This?
yes. Yeah. what
Okay,
kind of
this is
material-
this is Dacron rope
Right,
over to an insulator here, and then that's wire, and that's
the
wire.
actual support,
Was that just a telescoping pole or something?
This was 2 pieces of 20-foot aluminum irrigation.
That's right.
but you have the dicon rope, and do some isolation.
Yeah, this is
Aluminum in the wire. Okay.
this is 110 feet from here to the building. And this dipole is a 20-meter dipole, so that's 32 feet long. So we have a lot of Dacron rope. And there's a pulley here, and there's a pulley on the building. So you can lower this and work on it. Change the antenna. Not have to lower this. This has a hinge right here. And you can lower this. In fact, we did it once. We tilted that over and went over like a piece of cake. Very, very, very easy. So that worked out. That was a good design. That dipole works really pretty well. Not like that antenna on a 100-foot tower is going to work. But this was just showing you the manual. And the very last thing is future plans are the 100-foot aluminum tower. And this was, we had a meeting out there 2 years ago. We had the club meeting. And this was just a picture from that meeting. This is the inside of the Star Haven. And the radio room is through that door on back. Okay. Any questions about the manual? It's your Larry.
Wow. Can't read it from here. That MTU setting is absolutely critical. It's the first thing, because when you were helping me set mine out, as soon as you set the MTU, oh, it was working. But it was,
It's very important.
yes,
And I have a theory why Flex is denying that it exists. But it's just a theory. I've never actually been able to buttonhole somebody on Flex at Dayton and say, what's the backstory of this? They started out, their history, they started out making an SDR and ham radio. And when they developed it to a level of perfection, they sold it to the government contract, and moved up and cheated. Well, I have a theory, unproven, that they turned off ICMP for military security. ICMP is what a ping, one of the ICMP messages is a ping. And if you had a Flex radio that would accept a ping and respond to a ping, behind the lines of military installations. And all of a sudden, the enemy is pinging the network, and it's like, there's something up that in that hill that we don't know anything about. There's some sort of internet activity up there. That could be a real problem. So my theory is they turned that off, which turns the whole protocol on. So they cannot, you know, for one thing, they can't provide pings. For another thing, they don't reply to control messages like request to fragment the packet. And that's what's causing us the problem. But we have a workaround. And like Larry says, it's key.
You know, log into my house and use the mode, don't you have a VPN?
No,
Okay.
the radio is going over that static IP to port forward. Well, it's open, it's wide open. All you need is smart SDR and the password, which are up on the board.
And write it to you. And write it to you. Second.
What is the correct MTU?
1438 is,
Oh, if you, it depends on who your internet provider is. If you're on DSL, they've already stolen 8 packets, so they've lowered him. So, like if you're on,
So what's the maximum setting for MTU?
if you go into your computer, like I'm running it on a Mac, the Mac software, I set it. I actually looked at it just now, it's 1436, but you know, something
something
it's not
less.
critical, you just gotta be small enough, right?
Yeah, what happens is we're on a internet provider that uses a PPPoE protocol. And that uses 8 bytes out of the packet for its own whatever. So instead of a 40 byte header, it's a 48 byte header. And that's okay if you reduce your payload by 8 bytes so that you don't exceed, in that case, 1492, 1500 minus 8. So if you're on AT&T DSL or Lumen DSL, you'll go right through. If you're on Comcast or Xfinity, that's set at 1500, you'll never get through. You've got to, this explains the workaround. You can either set it on the PC, or you can set it on the home router. The home router will do it for the whole house, or your PC will just do it for the PC. It's your choice. Like Larry says, once you do it, it sticks forever.
Yeah, I was going to set it on my router, and I thought, well, why limit the router for all the other devices, because we have several other devices in our house. So I set it on the computer, and I only have the software on one computer. So I thought, well, only that one computer will be wrong, the rest of them, I can go ahead and wide over, because for commercial use, that setting doesn't restrict you. So they pull down capabilities and stuff like that.
Okay, so now we're going to do the demo. We're actually connecting out there. I have loaded Smart SDR, and I've put the passwords in and configured it. And now I brought it up, and there should be 3. Let's see, where's my?
That's a third party that writes it for the Mac and the iPhone.
Okay.
So he's charging for it, but the PC software that is free from Flash.
Right. The one we're going to use with Windows is free from Flex. And the first page on the remote guide, 285 remote guide, .wordpress, explains where to get it.
So when you initiated your Smart SDR, screen came up that said there are currently no reviews available.
That was just
because it just was still logging.
I think it's just a race condition. It wasn't quite. That was just a temporary thing while it.
On transit. Now you notice there's a yellow button that says disconnect. That's indicating that there's somebody else already connected. You can have two people connected. Only one of them can use the transmitter, but two people can use a receiver. So well,
And you have to be, do you have to be on the same band?
no. But
Because I tried to go to
antenna's
10
only gonna
meters
be
while I
two.
was on 40 and they wouldn't let me.
Well, yes, because your antenna is only gonna be tuned to one organ.
Right.
So this radio, this Maestro is still logged in. So I'm gonna disconnect it and that yellow should go. Or maybe somebody else.
I don't,
This is still off. Somebody else is in.
I don't know. I don't.
But we're gonna disconnect them. I don't know who it is.
Oh, you know what? I know who that is.
Wait just a minute. Don't take it off. Don't take it down. I was saying.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Did you take it down?
No, I'm still,
So. The way to get them off is just to knock them off like that.
if you click disconnect, does that disconnect somebody?
It's gonna disconnect you.
Well, that's not nice.
See the KE0P?
Oh,
So I clicked on disconnect, so it tells me who it is before I've disconnected.
so it hasn't disconnected.
And that's not,
So I was gonna leave it till you know, whatever you want me to do.
there you go, I disconnected. Oh, I see it also says up there, available. Under available, it says
I'm
you,
still seeing the panel gap there.
yeah, why didn't it disconnect? Try this.
I
We're
was
doing
rudely
Zoom.
disconnected here. Ting, I'm done.
It finally worked.
How can you tell when somebody's logged in when you get to that?
With that yellow bar.
Which yellow?
Well, it's gone now, but it did say disconnect.
You want to say disconnect? Okay.
And then up above where it says available, it says who it is. So we're gonna go ahead and connect. First of all, to the station. And here we are. We're into the radio. I don't know if we're gonna have enough audio. Or have any audio.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
So we're in the,
Mark, does the
oh, turn
audio
up the
play?
volume.
Play the audio through the PA system?
Mark, I need your help.
Can the audio
I'm
play
in the
through
mic by
the,
accident.
does the projector play through the?
Yeah, sure.
Room?
I don't know how you muted the Zoom on this PC.
Let's see, you got that? Oh, I see. I remember how to do this.
Hello? Yeah, it's still on. I could just turn it.
Let me see if I can select the flex. It's the microphone. Let's see, you probably have a slice one, right?
Well, it's a forward radio. I know. This little flag up here has a bar at the bottom with the mode right there. Right now we're in CW mode. If we click on that, it brings up all the modes we can be on. Let's go to upper sideband. And I can I can scroll across the screen this way. I can use my mouse to, as the tuning knob. I can double click, okay, let's see what's there. Or let's, if we're on sideband, the screen's a little slow because we're using up so much of the Wi-Fi bandwidth. So I've already slid that and it's gonna slide in a second. There you
You know what your frame rate set at? You have it turned down?
go. I keep it pretty low. Let's see. The frame rate is there. Mark pointed out an interesting thing. If your bandwidth is causing you to be a little choppy, if you click on display,
Oh, you know, another thing, disconnect your PC audio, that'll help you with a bit.
disconnect what?
The PC audio button up there. Turn that off.
Oh,
There you go.
The default on these, boy, this is.
So last Sunday, during the football games, and people were streaming like on, YouTube or, Amazon or Prime or whatever. I had two pan adapters open. And just for fun, I had been using the frame rate at max and I hadn't had a problem. And then all of a sudden, the screen just started breaking up. And as soon as I lowered the frame rate down to like 15 or something, it couldn't go, so.
So the signals are a little better now that we tune to 20 meters. Because we're on 20 meters. Back over on this side. So this is the default. If you get on here, well, it's freezing here. And if you start seeing it freeze, this is just the display. It has nothing to do with your transmission or receiving. So why use up all the bandwidth just for your display? So if you go up here and click on the display, like we were before, one up, there it is.
Yeah,
It takes me to rates.
it's really laggy.
Yeah, the lag.
Part of the problem is, you know, we're using the Wi-Fi in the coffee shop, which is over there. You know, they
Yes.
probably don't have a very fast connection either, so.
I'm gonna turn these down. This is frames per second and refresh rate. So we've turned those way down. So now the screen doesn't look as nice because it's not real time, but you're gonna have a lot better signal coming and going on everything else. So I can, these are sideband signals. And it's upper sideband, so I'll put my frequency at the lower half of the sideband, lower half of the signal. And this is hearing this guy. But we've got so much lag that you can't hear the audio. You can hear it on the Maestro, but you can't hear it here just because we don't have enough Wi-Fi signal speed
So
bandwidth.
Maestro still using bandwidth?
Not now, it's all.
Oh,
But the
I'm
Maestro,
a sleeper, so I'm not using that.
yeah, this is because we're doing Zoom on the same Wi-Fi as we're doing this, all this videos.
Lots of latency. Lots of latency.
Yeah,
You said you're using Zoom, do you mean you're not using the application on the laptop?
no, the laptop is on Zoom. So the laptop is putting the screen that it's seeing onto Zoom. And I know it's going out to the remote. So it's using a lot of it.
That's how we're recording it.
And just.
Well, interestingly, it says that your signal's good. So,
Yeah,
see down there, it says that you got a good signal.
there's the Wi-Fi. Pegged. That's what's holding the line.
Yeah.
That's a CPU. So we're pretty,
Yeah, that's interesting. Your smart unit down there showing
Yeah,
at the bottom.
yeah,
there.
the bar graph down there.
It's- I used to see that change all over the place.
shows you the good latency, anything under 100 milliseconds. This is round trip time, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, the max is pushing it half
It's
second.
been up to, yeah. Well, no errors, so that's good. So that's now let's demonstrate CW. Any questions on sideband? How do I get on sideband with my laptop? Well, this is a Zoom headset that I use on Zoom. Plug my USB, has a little microphone right here. That's how I get on sideband. I could use a separate microphone and the USB jacks here or the headphone and microphone jacks. Larry.
You can also use the mic on the laptop itself.
And you could use the mic that's on the laptop.
If you brought the room phones.
Yeah, this works really well. And the audio, if we could do it, the audio plays through the speaker on here, or we could put an external speaker just as you do on your PC. You're forgetting. Nobody's asking any questions.
Well, no, you've got,
Is it overwhelming or is it just so clear?
I think you're fine, but
Okay,
it is I will say, it is kind of overwhelming when you go to do it the first time. And you could talk to Mark.
sure.
I mean,
Just ignore 99% of the controls that are on there, because you really only need about 5 things.
but when you can't get it to work, I mean, when I
Yeah.
first set up the Mac software a week and a half ago. I had hair before it started.
I guess,
Yes, they have in the green too.
the FT8 mode is one that I haven't been able to do.
I have noticed that the Mac and the iPhone versions are much easier than the Windows version.
Once I started to see the software, I'm very impressed with how good a job. It's written the software is done.
It's mainly because he's built a lot of the stuff into the software, like FT8 on Windows, you have to do the separate.
It's
You know, you have
kind
to-
of a one-man shop and he has.
Oh,
there's a
he's
ton
just
of
cranking.
people in there. I'm like, I don't know how he pulls it off.
Yeah.
So let's go to CW. And get down in the CW portion of the band. And it looks pretty active today. It'd be nice if we could just hear.
Try turning it on. Might have muted your speaker.
I don't want to drop Zoom. It's just. Is the audio going out to Zoom, out to us?
Whoops, what did I do?
Imagine, if you will, we're hearing more. So
I see it. I see it. I know. It was muted.
wow. Can you hear that? Do you hear Morse code?
Yes.
Or am I imagining that? Great, thank you, Rick.
I've never operated with a remote station. But if you're working with the expedition, depending on the latency, You may want to start sending no signal report.
All right, how to send. Big challenge on a remote. I want to be able to send with my key, or if it's a contest, I want to be able to send with my N1MM or my keyboard. So right down here, there's a thing called CWX. And when you push that, this field comes up. We turn that off. That's the way it looks when it's not pushed. So push CWX. And this field comes up. I have two things, send and live. So right now, let me put some V's in there. There are 3 V's. And if I hit send, watch the power up here. And I'm going to hit send. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. And the speed was at 26 words a minute. If I want to slow that down, that little up down arrow right there. Now, that's one way to do it. That's using the keyboard. I use the keyboard.
I didn't see you going to transfer. Do you want to transfer?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Oh,
When I hit send,
I guess that.
well, I don't have to go into transmit. When I hit send, it goes into transmit. Oh, I have to have something in there. Okay, hit send. So I didn't have to hit EX. It automatically, when I hit send, it automatically sent. Now the next another way, hit live. Now, when I type in this field, watch the power. Real time, send immediately. So there's 2 keyboard modes right there. Turn that off. Now I want to do a paddle. Everybody know what that is? A wind keyer. Right? So I've pressed, this is a K1EL wind keyer. There's a USB in the back. Plug the USB in here. Paddle in the back here. See if you can hear the side tone from the wind keyer. Can you hear that back there? Yep. All right. I need a piece of software. It's free. Called WK Flex. Interfaces the wind keyer to the Flex Radio remote. So this, let's see if we can get this going. So first of all, the hardware has to be connected through CAT. So I've brought up my CAT.
which is a separate application that comes with the software,
Okay,
the Flex software.
when I first brought up SDR, Smart SDR, there were 3 panels. All I did was the SDR panel. That's the radio. The second panel is the DAX, digital audio transmission or transfer. If I was going to do FD8, I would need digital audio. I would do sideband, that's not digital. I don't need DAX for sideband. I need DAX for FD8. And for this, for CW, I need the CAT because I'm going to key over the CAT commands. So the one that said CAT, one said just SDR, one said DAX, one said CAT. And I've already clicked on it. Is this nice? Yeah. You notice the third thing, let's do it this way. The third thing down So this says Smart SDR Cat. That was the panel like this, and I had clicked connect. Then this pops up. These are the cats to the radio. And this is the cat from the wind keyer. You can open that up and show the settings. This is how it will be set up. And this is already set up at the remote. So you only need to set up wind keyer at your piece. It's already set up at the remote. I don't want to, boy, that's still waiting. I can minimize that, but I don't want to close it because then it shut it down. All right. So that's one step. Now I'm still not transmitting. So the next thing I need is WK flex. Here it is. WKFlex.exe. So it's not an application. It's like, it's an old, this guy wrote it in MS-DOS. So, and he put it on his Dropbox. So you have to get into his Dropbox to get this. And to me, I thought that was impossible. So I brought WK Flex on some USB. So put up your hands if you want. If you want to get on CW on the remote, put up your hand.
CWX though is pretty cool, I think. I mean,
Keyboard works fine. But if you want to use your own paddle or your own straight key, here's the software. And where are those sheets? And all that stuff I just clicked on the screen. I know I went through it so too fast to make any sense. It's written up in a sheet here for you. If you want it. So to demonstrate it, I'm gonna open this program. I hope.
Seems like your computer's really sluggish.
so you've got two CAN adapters. Would your
I just
bandwidth
minimized
be
it.
helped by turning off one of those?
There it is. It just now came up. Okay, this is WK Flex.
Yeah.
You have to set it up. This is at your house. And you need the COM port that you're on and the COM port that the Flex is on. So this is where you set those up. So you find out the COM port that you're on with Device Manager. Go to the ports. And all this Flex radio is not your stuff. I mean, it's the Flex radio stuff. That's your stuff is this. And that says COM6.
If you're ever not sure, a quick way to tell is just unplug it and see what disappears. Or plug it in and see what appears.
That's right. So that's that's the local WK. Local WK. I'm pushing on. Right here, I want to see COM6. Now I want to go to the Flex WK. And that's what you get from this cat window that we started to look at. And it says COM9. So I just wanted to look at it, I didn't want to change it. And here I want to put COM9. There it is. Save that. Error. Let's try to save it again. What is this error? Well, I have saved it. I have started it outside of its directory, so now it can't find its any file.
Wonder if there's two of them running.
Yeah.
See down the icon, hover over the icon on your toolbar. Oh, you just close it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there were two of them running. I think.
okay.
So what about showing FT8 quick rather than,
We've done that other meetings,
okay.
but if there's time, I mean, would you like to demonstrate?
Oh, I could demonstrate
Okay.
it to you if there's anybody wants to.
All right, so now it's saved them. Now I'm gonna hit start. And it says, I'm waiting for CW. It looks hard the first time you do it, but after it becomes second nature, let's get our radio back up so we can see it.
Or what? Is there an HDMI?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's-
Oh,
Where are we going? Are we doing it? Watch your power in the upper right-hand corner. Let's let this settle and catch up with us here. It's
just fast.
It would be almost instantaneous if we weren't also running Zoom.
I was just gonna say, as soon as you turn Zoom off, it's gonna
Yeah.
completely change the.
Yeah, for example,
14100. No. Oh, I got two pan adapters going now.
You know, we could do more too, is plug this into you have HDMI on that?
I do.
You just plug it right into it.
Size and all that.
It's over here. And I got that second pan adapter. But I'm gonna shut it down.
Okay.
How much noise? How much noise? Low system resources.
Essentially, along the cable.
Are they better or worse?
Don't know if they've got a turn on the other.